Welcome, everyone. I'm Dan Tudorache. I present this Vibe Top podcast for all of you wanted to know more details behind the curtains from the um, technology, business, and human side of how a software developer grows and gets into high level positions like solution architects, CTOs, or director of engineering. But what I want to do and how I want to explore this with my guests is by having and counting the emotional state of being, the emotional intelligence aspects in our journey to become a better version of what we want to be and access the role that we want to access. Today, I have Aubrey King with me. It's solution architect and evangelist at F5, but I will leave him to get you more from what he does and his background and his experience. And Aubrey, I want to start with presenting your current role and what are you up into now?
Sure. Well, thanks, Dan, for having me on first. It's great to be here. But there are a couple of things that I do currently. My primary role is an evangelist and solution architect for F5. And with that role, what I typically tend to do is figure out what the community is working on, our user community, find out what's important to them, and then deliver solution videos or other content that can help them achieve whatever they want to get done with F5 or other related technologies, I guess you could say. In addition to that, I also accepted a new role recently, which is not, unfortunately, not a paid role, but is a role nonetheless with OWASP, so the Open Worldwide Application Security Program, right? Or project. Sorry, they have a new group, the OWASP Top 10 for Large Language Model Applications. So we are charged with detailing the security and governance for AI applications today. It's been a fascinating thing. I've been doing that for maybe a month, and maybe like 2 months, 3 months. Wow, time flies. And then I've been with F5 for coming on 14 years, but I was in sales most of that time. Now it's only been a little more than a year that I've been at my current role.
Wow, it sounds impressing on what you achieved this time and 14 years at the company. I'm pretty impressed. But we will talk that later. How did you manage to stay this long in a company?
It's not easy.
What was your motivation behind? But I want to explore a little your beginnings in this industry, in the tech industry.
The beginnings were fun. They were not what you'd expect either, I guess.
I don't expect anything, so I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think most of my peers tend to have a couple of different degrees. I see a lot of computer science degrees. I see electrical engineering degrees. I'm starting to see some younger people in the roles with cybersecurity degrees, which is fantastic. I like that. But for me, I came out of college with a video production degree, and I realized very quickly that I would have a very hard time surviving here in the United States with a video production degree. I would have to work at 7 to 8 radio and TV stations with no health care, no retirement, and really just kind of struggle to even make minimum wage. So that was kind of a wake-up call that my degree was not. I had imagined that I would be on the Discovery Channel filming documentaries with a boom microphone, kind of like hanging over a cliff and doing those kinds of things, or underwater, for Shark Week, those kinds of things too. But that's just not how it panned out. So coming out of college, just to pay the rent, I ended up getting a a small job with a reseller locally. They resold hardware, software, and networking equipment. I knew nothing about any of that. I really didn't, because my minor in college was economics, so I wasn't even close. I mean, I was a person that ran my computer on DOS rather than in Windows. I didn't see a need for, the majority of my educational programs I did in DOS. So I didn't want to boot Windows. I mean, that was just something that, so I guess I was always somewhat fairly technically apt on computers and just didn't realize it or know it. But this job doing sales really kind of awakened, I guess, the computer person in me. So I really wanted to learn more, and I thought, my key to having a longer career would be to really understand the technical side of things, and maybe I'd get back to the sales of technology. There seemed to
Mhm.
be a way to make money in it, so I figured I'd get back to that at some point. But the first thing I wanted to do was learn more about this technology stuff because it was very, very interesting to me. So I used my experience on selling on the phone because that job was 100% phone sales. I covered a state in the US that I don't live in. Never visited there once and covered them for 6 months. I met quota every month or beat it, which is great. That's what you want to do. But after 6 months, I left that place and got a help desk job. So they taught me Novell. They taught me Windows NT. They taught me how to work better with Windows 98 and to really do that in a networked environment. We've had both Windows and Novell running. So the dual stack network was fantastic. We had services on both. We also had Unix services that I had to manage or take care of.
Wow.
Um, we also had mainframe and AS400. It was just an amazing place to just get a lot of experience. Was that initial help desk job? Um,
Hmm. It
and
seemed like you had a lot of challenges back then, and it was your first job in the industry, and there were a lot of things coming up to you and from all the directions. And how did you feel that? I mean, you had those challenges. How did you manage to get over and get past that?
so that's a great question. For me, I have always been someone that doesn't think about the obstacles. I think about the end goal.
Okay.
And so for me, the end goal will shift. I mean, my end goal in life was to be a great dad, right? That's what
Oh,
I aim
oh,
to do.
wow.
Right. Of course, that's the end goal. But as far as career, I do continually kind of update my goals and where I want to go with things. So, um, so with the help desk job, right? I knew that from there I would want to move towards, a more advanced role with respect to kind of customer interaction, and then move into servers. I figured that was a natural path. So I did exactly that. I went to desktop support and then moved over into Unix because I was a Linux guy from 1998. I picked it up. I didn't think it made sense for us to keep spending all this money on server technology when there was far superior technology out there available for free.
Yes.
So I became
You're
an
correct.
evangelist inside my own company to do that. But my
Mhm.
psychology, to further answer your question, it wasn't something that I really took the time to dive into. Rather than rather than think about how am I feeling with this, I just knew, all right, that next goal is to get up to desktop, or if I can skip and go to servers, fantastic. But really, what am I looking to do? So it was learn, 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 learn. Um, I was hungry. I guess that's the psychology behind it at that time. That's how I got through it. I was hungry. I wanted to know more and advance in my career. I've always been fairly career focused. My mother was as well.
Mm. It seemed like you had this skill of problem solving. You already had it, or it was built n- naturally on the way, or from the start, or do you already had it?
That's a great question too. So where I developed that was, I would say from the start, I am an only child of a single mom, and for me that meant a lot of alone time. But uh, my mom did well for herself in her career. So she was an HR executive at an oil company, which was okay. It paid the bills, but it meant she was not there. And what that meant for
Mm.
me was problem solving. To get back to your question, um, it was always problem solving. So, you know, at 6, saying, how am I going to make dinner? Like those kinds of things happened where my mom would call and say, I'm going to be late. There's nothing I can do. I've got a meeting. I'm not going to be able to get out of here till 7. It takes 40 minutes to get home. Aubrey, you got to eat. And so I had to learn at a very young age to figure out how to do some stuff for myself. And I also learned how to find out how to do things, right? There was no Google. It was the 80s. And so I had to know who I could call, right? That was the
Mhm.
thing. Who can I communicate with to find out what needs to get done? Let's say my mom's not there and I need to figure out how to run a load of laundry, something that really happened, right?
Mhm.
Figured I could call my aunt. So I got on the phone, called my aunt, and she was the one that helped me figure out how to work my laundry machine so that I could actually get a load of laundry done for myself in time. That sort of thing, though. Did we have friends of the family that I could call to help? And yes, we absolutely did. I had lots of friends of the family that I'd call to find out, hey, how do I do my taxes, Uncle Bill? That's something. He wasn't actually my uncle, um, but he was always Uncle Bill. So that was it. I mean, it was just because I had nobody a lot of times. I had to figure out how to do things for myself very early.
Yeah, yeah, that's a skill that helped you. Actually, I think it helped you in all the entire career. And I want to ask you, what was a specific project or a specific moment when it significantly impacted your career growth, and what have you learned from it?
So there have been a number of things that have been really impactful along the way in my career. Um, I would say if you want to know the most impactful one, though, um, there was a moment, and boy, it's funny. You talk about wanting to get the personal element here. Give you the personal element.
I
Um,
appreciate it.
yeah. So I worked in operations after I was on desktop. Ended up working in Unix operations, internet. So it's internet service provider, Unix. So anything that was Unix, we had web servers, we had mail servers, DNS, LDAP, and on and on. A number of other
Mhm.
um, applications that we supported externally. Um, and I stayed in a Unix role even after the one company that taught me the most, probably Global Crossing. I learned so much from working there. But after going there, I worked at a couple other service providers that really it was a grind, I will say, and that drive for me to learn was tremendous, and I've had a hard time turning it off. Actually, I mean, I became work from home at 2003 because my company had gone bankrupt. So I had already kind of mastered the whole like work from home thing. But the hardest thing about work from home is trying to figure out when to stop. It's not, when you can start, but when to stop. And so I would work 80-hour weeks, very often from my couch. And that's just the kind of the guy I was. I just wanted to learn, and find out if I was working on a new script or, some way to make LDAP authentication easier across my servers or whatever it might be. That was something that drove me, and I needed to get that done. But I needed to find a way to turn that off in myself also. And I had a friend call me, my friend Bob Hagan. He ended up calling me up and saying, hey, I had a company called F5 call me. And They are looking for somebody to sell in our region. Well, upstate New York, there's nobody here. There, I mean, really, it's a very small. There are no major cities. It's 4 or 5 hours to drive from one side of upstate to the other side. Zero major cities. So, so I was a decent choice. I knew right out of the gates. And he said, I've got a phone number for the hiring manager. Do you want it? And I said, well, I should probably work with your headhunter, right? Or F5 recruiter, like F5 HR, right? I should call them. He's like, listen, I have the hiring manager's phone number. Do you want it? And I said, okay, sure. And I called this guy at lunch and we talked for 2 hours. I was amazed. He picked up my phone call. He thought I was someone else. He said, normally I would never pick up the phone, but I'm really glad I did. If he didn't know the phone number. So that's not the actual really epiphany sort of moment of getting there. During that process, I started to become a new person. I mean, really, I was a hardcore Linux zealot, and I was overworked, and I was overcaffeinated, and I was very angry as a person. I mean, really, as a person, it was like I was learning so much, but it was such a hard culture. I mean, it was this nonstop work, no sleep, and just so difficult. So I had become kind of like this very, very hard to work with person. And then here I have an opportunity to go work in sales for a manufacturing company that would certainly be a bump in pay. I mean, certainly it would make my top goal, right, being a dad, that much easier to try and move to that sort of lifestyle. And maybe I wouldn't work 80-hour weeks anymore, which I didn't, by the way. But there was a single moment. I had stayed awake for a software release for the company that I worked for. Unfortunately, I had to be in my building until 8:30 a.m. And my interview with 12 people from F5 was at noon.
Oh, wow.
So 40 minutes away from my house, I got in my car and I was near delirious. I could barely think. And here's my shot, my one shot, which, I mean, we already know I got. But I have this shot, and so I'm driving home, and I'm thinking about what am I going to say to these guys? And I'm thinking, God, I can't think about anything. I just need to sleep. I hit my bed. I slept for 2 hours. I got up. I put on my suit, and I got in the car. And here's where this moment happened. I went, this is it. This is my time. And this is a time that I don't have to be who I was anymore. I don't have to be an angry, operations person that's used to being abused, that's horrified of getting laid off all the time. I don't need to be that person anymore. What I can be when I get out of this car is absolutely confident. I can be confident in my abilities and myself and my understanding of technology and my creative ability to architect solutions. I can be confident in those things because I have a different way of approaching things. I always have in terms of architecture. Anyone who has worked with me in North America or globally, actually, I've done some service provider stuff as well in the rest of the world as well. But can attest to that. It's I do tend to be confident and very bold in my solutions. So when I stepped out of that car, it was like I was a brand new person, and it was amazing. Just all I had to do, Dan, was just say to myself, I'm done. I'm done being that person. I am going to be someone better than I've been to date. I'm really going to be something different. Then I walked out of the car. I got poured on. I mean, like the skies cracked open and rained all over me. I'm not even kidding you. Like, so I'm soaked head to toe. And I walked into this interview like a brand new man, but soaked. And so I walk in, I see where they're interviewing, and I didn't, I had a little time. So I dried myself off, and I went and I sat down, and just, it's funny. I went and I sat down finally for my interview. And I realized within 1 minute that my fly was open, my zipper. So I had to find a way. So, but you know what? That brand new Aubrey, that new confidence, right? I was able to pull that off and not even worry about it. I zipped my fly, and everything was good. I wowed them in the interview, and here I am.
Yes. Based on your starting of your career or this episode, what advice would you give to someone starting their own journey in this tech industry?
Learn, honestly, really, just learn. And one of the things that I would say is you get to a point in learning where you can choose to learn many different things, and you have the ability to learn only so much, right? I mean, it's almost like a computer with RAM, right? You only have so much ability to process so many, so many bytes. It's just you can't go beyond that limit at some point. So when you're learning new technologies, when you're taking the time to learn some new things, try and figure out, how does this apply to my, not just my goals, my immediate goals? Will it also help my end goals? And here's where I think I differ a little bit from most folks, but will this thing that I'm thinking about learning help with something else that I've already learned? Right. So
Mhm.
that's one thing that I've thought about over time. It's efficient, I think, to really focus your learning around things that will work well together. And I'll tell you what, Dan, it always aggravated me that I never used my degree. And a year and change ago, when I had the opportunity to make a change from sales to marketing and do video production, which is my degree, I jumped at it. It was like, great, this is an opportunity to incorporate yet another thing that I took the time to learn. So, not just learn, but use it is my advice. Use what you've learned.
Awesome. And if you could go back at your beginnings of your career, what's one piece of advice you wish you had received?
I wish I had. I guess I would say I wish I had made the transition into sales earlier. That's
Okay.
that's it. And I think I have given this piece of advice as well, to a number of different technologists coming up. If you have some sort of communication skill or ability, if you can look someone dead in the face and you believe in the technology that you're talking about, um, consider sales. It is tough. You do sacrifice things. You sacrifice a lot of time with your family, which is the hardest sacrifice, I think. Um, but the gain is tremendous, and I don't mean just financially. I mean it gives you sales gives you the opportunity to experience all parts of the business. And when I say that, I mean I talk with you know um, frontliner cybersecurity people all the time. I do. I also
Mhm.
talk with CISOs. That's just I have to be able to talk with anyone in the company, and it's kind of a it's kind of a neat thing to be able to do that. So if you are the kind of person that can talk to people, definitely wield that and go forth and sell for a while just to see what it's like. Because really you learn a ton.
Awesome. Awesome. And I will want to explore this a little more because communication is part of a broader skills that we don't actually learn in the tech universities or in the
True.
um,
It's true.
software development part or and so on or hardware architecture. But exploring your decision, there were other specific moments in time that played a crucial role in shaping your career.
Um, I think so. I mean, there were a number of different, different times when I had to make some adjustments or learn some lessons in the career. There was a time that I left F5 for about 8 months, actually, um, which was tough. I thought I was doing the best thing that I could. I went to go out and work with a partner of F5's to sell F5,
Mhm.
but also to incorporate Palo Alto. So at the time, Palo Alto was very, very new. And for whatever reason, we have a firewall and we have a sales team, and our sales team thinks, man, we can just sell that firewall and people don't need their Palo Alto. Oh, no, no. We have a different kind of firewall, guys. It's not like one firewall suits all kind of thing. You know, ours stands up to 100 gig worth of DDoS.
Mm,
Theirs does not. Theirs will
yes.
detect all kinds of data leakage stuff that ours just will not. They're just, very, very different animals. And so for me, I learned a way to really make both of them work together. Uh, and to the point where you're offloading SSL with the F5 devices, and then you're able to scale Palo Altos horizontally. So rather than just do what Palo Alto tells you to do and utilize the pairs, just scale them horizontally, and you're essentially your F5 traffic manager is doing the SSL offload and then sending all this unencrypted data to these Palo Altos. Why? Because the F5 has a huge SSL chip in it. The Palo Alto does not. So
See.
that kind of thing was, I guess, kind of, it was interesting for me. I got that solution done, and then became kind of marketable, I think. And I found myself really able to be enticed by the idea of, hey, just take your idea and sell that, and only that. The idea was fantastic, and I was excited at the opportunity to go and do something new and still work with the technology that I loved. But I guess the hardest thing about that was the fact that I didn't end up only selling F5 and Palo Alto, right? There was an entire Cisco business that I had to take care of as well. And there were a bunch of other partners that I also needed to kind of incorporate. And those partners didn't always incorporate into the vision, but that didn't matter at my new employer. What mattered is making sales. So I'm getting back to this thing. That really ended up teaching me that I should not move away from kind of my I guess my longer term goals too much.
Mm,
That I should really kind of work towards just becoming a master of what it is that I do, and moving towards that. Because I'll tell you what, I got sort of blindsided by this thing. It was really, like a nice offer. It was very much like a, hey, we're going to do this, and it's going to be all yours, and you're going to be the boss, and let's do this thing. And it didn't end up being that. So I guess what that really taught me, though, is to not just to stick to my guns, but also to really rely on some of my mentors. That's
mm,
that's really
yeah.
kind of what it
I
came
want to
down to,
get
Dan. I wish I had contacted any of the people that I viewed as mentors when it came down to that decision. I think any one of them would have said, "You're an idiot. Don't do it."
Oh wow.
So that was
Uh,
that was another one, right? I mean, like, so really relying on the mentors is something that it's
mhm.
done well for me. I've had a number of different people that have mentored me through time, and through my career, and I think to not include those people in the big decisions is a mistake. So
Mhm.
that's another time where and the psychology of that time where it was sort of pivotal in my career. And by the way, when I did come back to F5, because they had a job for me that I was qualified for, I came back into the service provider arena, which was amazing. I got to again reuse stuff that I hadn't, that I had taken the time to learn. Um, and I got to work on some solutions that were just truly large. I mean, large scale, like, running, 16 million packets per second on a virtual machine, stuff like that. I mean, like things that aren't
Amazing.
done. Like people don't do that. Yeah. So, stress testing in service provider is not like stress testing in any other form of technology. Really, it's they they
Mhm.
they take things to the absolute maximum.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I basically, if we explore this psychology part that you mentioned, and I want to go a little deeper and ask you about if you know about emotional intelligence and why this part is important in the tech industry, no matter what role you have.
I'm not super familiar with it.
Mm,
No.
okay. I will get into more details. So the emotional intelligence was basically researched more by Daniel Goleman in the 19th, and he came up with this concept. But the concept is not, it comes also from psychology, and it involves few skills characteristics. So self control, self management, self awareness, right? Emotional control of yourself, emotional awareness of others, and so on. So these are the main parts from the emotional intelligence, and it includes also empathy. It includes how you communicate with others, the social awareness to that part, and all these things are under the umbrella of emotional intelligence, because we have the classical IQ and there is this EQ, right? Which is, I consider it's important. But from your point of view, have you seen this helping you in your career?
Yeah, I would say so. If you think back to what I referred to as kind of a more angry Aubrey, right? Like that was, I was not very emotionally intelligent at the time. If you're going by what what you just defined here,
Mm-hmm.
I was somebody who was very focused on my tasks and what I had to get done. I mean, I had other people around me, but nothing really was as important as my tasks and what I had to get done at that time. Um, and although I have always had communication skills, that's something that I've always had. I certainly had gotten to a point in my operations role where I did not use those skills. So I felt almost as though, um, from from an intelligence perspective in my operations role, I took advancements. I definitely increased my intelligence. But if you think about my emotional intelligence, I feel like I took a step back. Right? I regressed. I sort of stayed closed and quiet and just really head in the screen and the hands on the keyboard. That's really all I did. And truly, it's funny. My friendships and things like that. A lot of the human relationships that I had were not doing very well at the time because, again, I was not. So it wasn't just the career that suffered, Dan. It was also the personal portion. And truly, with the career, I was going nowhere. People could tell that I was not emotionally intelligent, if you will. There were
Mm-hmm.
times when I would lash out at management. Why would you spend $2 million when our company's bankrupt? We could have just developed a Linux-based solution for free, and we could have employed more people. Was what I kept going back to, and I thought I was
Yeah.
being very human focused, but it wasn't. The way that I went about my communication strategies were so it was not advanced in any way. And that
Mm-hmm.
moment that I talked to you about when I really just decided to be a brand new person, it was like when I shook all that off, Dan. It was like I said, "All right, I'm ready to be better. I'm ready to be more emotionally intelligent, if you will." Um, and I was, honestly. I got back to who I had been prior. Was very good with people. I mean, I wouldn't be in a marketing position where I speak to thousands of people on a day-to-day basis, um, if I wasn't. So,
Mm-hmm.
and that was really that moment really marked a change. So it's been so to answer your question directly, it's been very important, I guess, in my career. I couldn't advance without advancing my own emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Well, from that time when you decided that you want to be a different person, that you want to grow and get rid of everything that was somehow a limitation for you, and it's like going to race with the car with the handbrake um, pulled,
Yeah,
right?
that is right.
So from that moment, you said, okay, I need to be different, and I need to handle all the things differently. And yes, this part in psychology, when you decide that was a turning point for you and to make a change in your life, with your life, for your future. Share other instance where these things from emotional intelligence helped you. I don't know, when you had a team conflict or addressing a challenging situation after that point.
Yes. This is a neat one. I had been involved in a project. Wow. I had been involved in a project for years with a tier one global service provider, and they don't do anything quick. It's not. I mean, nothing's ever quick with them. So I had been working on this project, and it was I can talk about what the project was. It was DNS load balancing, but it was gigantic. I mean, like again, massive scale. And that's what when I mentioned all those packets on a virtual machine, it was also virtual. So,
Hmm.
um, so that project was very, very difficult. It was all testing brand new technology that really no one had had a lot of experience testing before, too. So we're talking. This was the emergence of smart NICs. This was not a technology prior. And my customer had made a decision. We are going with smart NICs, and that's what we're doing. So,
Hmm.
F5, can you work with this stuff? And I said, sure, I'll work with it. And I worked with it, and I tuned it, and I got it to the point where, all of our documentation was like spot on. And this is exactly how we needed the thing tuned and whatnot. We got to a point where it was like, sweet, things are looking good. Um, the customer liked it, and they said, great, let's take it to the next level. Let's see if we can turn this up a notch, because truly we don't want you to do 1 million packets per second on this thing. We want you to do 4 million packets on this thing. And I went, oh, okay. Shifting goalposts, right? So we 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 began to work on that portion of the project, and it was going very poorly. We were working with an ixia. I
Hmm.
don't know if you're familiar with Ixia. If anyone watching is not, they are a packet generator. And so you can really, put out very large amounts of packets. And you can craft those packets to be whatever you want. You can replay actual traffic and things like that as well. So we crafted a new test on their Ixia using a test that they'd always used for DNS. And they'd always used this on virtual machines. They'd always used it on DNS servers. I mean, it was just always what they had used. And we used that, and it worked, to a point. And then we got to a point where things just didn't make any sense. And my, you know, I'm looking at the graphs on the Ixia. They kind of get up, 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 and then they plateau. And
Hmm.
that's usually what you want. But they would drop, and they would come back up, and they would drop, and they would come back up and drop. And so rather than a nice line, you had this jagged thing that didn't look right. It looked like something was clearly a mistake or wrong. It shouldn't have
Hmm.
operated like that.
Yeah, I see.
So we spent no, sorry, this is an
Okay,
interesting
okay,
one.
no worries.
We spent about a year trying to figure out what was going on with that, Dan, alone, a year on just this one
Wow.
problem, because one of the test engineers there said, it's your gear, it's your F5 stuff, it's not working right. And I'm going, I it's it looks great. I'm not receiving any errors. I'm not even stressed. My machine wasn't stressed in the slightest. I still had a lot of CPU left, a lot of RAM, a lot of everything was still left. We ended up working this for a long time, and the management was getting really, really angry at us. They didn't like that. They wondered if I was incompetent. They wondered if the product was incompetent. They wondered all these things. Finally, I was able to, and this gets to your question. Finally, I was able to overcome. Um, And what I did is I brought a whole bunch of my architects together, and we figured out a lot of a lot of things on our end, we ended up actually counting packets and things like that. And really, we did all these TCP dumps for anyone who knows what that is, and dug through them. And really, just it was like I had 8 people, honestly, like 8 people from F5 working on this nonstop for like 3 weeks. And we came back together and said, hey, this is worse than we thought. It's a problem on the Ixia. We've run out of random number generation, and we were able to prove it. So
Wow.
we get to a certain point where their ability to be random in the packet fails, and then to anything else, including the Ixia, it looks as though you're streaming traffic through one connection. It's very, very bizarre behavior. Ixia had never seen it, but by the time we got an Ixia engineer on the phone, they verified it and said, yeah, absolutely. We're beyond randomness. So we're going to switch and we're going to go to a new utility, and we're going to use a new Ixia. Like, then they started using a newer generation Ixia to do the test. Well, that one engineer who had been going after us and pointing the finger at us, when it got time, and this is still part of the emotional intelligence piece, when it got time to talk to his management and tell them what happened, because they wanted to know, oh, it works now and you can do 4 million packets per second. I said 16 before. Well, it did get to 16. But this is at the 4 million mark. And they said, you can, 4 million packets per second. That's great. Why did it take a year? Why did I waste my time on you? And really, he got very upset with me. And what I could have said was, it's that guy right there. I told him that this was the problem a year ago, and he is the reason why we spent a year without a solution for you. That's why. And really, that was the answer. It was this guy. He would not accept, our results as valid because they weren't using his test. So, but we were able to prove it another way. So instead of throwing him under the bus, because I saw him, he was right there across the table from me. I could see him. He was staring at me. And honestly, the employer managed his green card. And if the employer fired him, he would have gone back. He would have had to leave this country. And I looked at him and I said, you know what? I think we need to absolutely applaud his performance. He showed that he's dedicated. And I was talking about the engineer. I said, he showed he's super dedicated to making you guys get the absolute best possible solution you can get. And, when he saw something that has always worked for you and it suddenly didn't work, he made the decision to take it to the next level and always try to find that answer. And if he didn't find it, it wasn't good enough. And I think we should all applaud that. And so I did say what happened, but at the same time, I said, hey, this is the kind of employee you want working for you. Well, the guy ended up getting a promotion. We ended up making a sale, and it was, everything was good. And that guy who hated me before, I mean, really, he hated to watch me come in the building. He could not stand me. I think he thought his days were wasted whenever I was on site, really. But after that meeting, we were best buddies. Like, really, he wanted to talk to me every time I came in. He's, hey, Aubrey, how you doing? It's great to see you. We're ready to work on our project. Yes, I'm ready to go, Swami. Let's do it.
Wow, awesome example. And I love that part that you showed empathy and you team part, even that he was not from your team and you had clinches and everything not went very well, but you had the power when you were showed by the manager to say, okay, we did what we could with the given materials, solutions, and so on. And here's the answer. And how did you felt that time when you knew it was that you were right, but in the end, it was not your fault?
I mean, I guess you feel good about the fact that you were right. I knew I was right, but I felt great about the fact that I was right. I felt upset that it had taken us so long to get
Mm,
there, and that it was all that guy's fault. But
mhm,
at the same time, I understood his psychology, and I knew why he wanted to, wanted to do what he did. He was just
mhm,
doing what management wanted him to do, really.
mhm.
So, so I felt really good about what I did with him. Like
Yes.
having the power, and they would have fired him. I mean, they really, if I had come down and said that dude is at fault, he wasted a year of your time, they would have let him. He was a contractor.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was no skin off their back. They would have
Mhm.
just let him go. But I thought to myself, and sometimes I have compared the job of being a solutions engineer at a manufacturer to like being a mafia boss almost.
Wow.
Because your job is to know people and to know how to get things done always, and your job is to do favors and call in on favors. And so
Mm,
I saw an opportunity with this guy to extend myself. I
mhm.
did, and I thought I could destroy this guy. But if I destroy him, what value? There's no value at that point.
Nothing.
So instead of destroying him, I chose to, hey, I want this guy on my side. And I knew he would be. I knew he would flip and be willing to be on our team. And he was. So
Yeah. You were speaking about mentors earlier, so
yeah.
uh, I just want to ask you if there was a certain time you recall a piece of advice from a mentor that had a profound impact on you or your career or your development.
Well, I could the one guy who told me that there was an F5 job was a great mentor of mine early in my career. So I could say that. Um But I don't think I will. I'm going to give you a short one. There was another mentor of mine since I've been here at F5, who's now an executive here at F5. We've known each other, I mean, since my first day on the job. So it's coming up on 14 years. He was in my interviews even. He watched me interview. Um, and one of the things that he taught me a million things, but one of the really quick things that he taught me that saved me so much time and effort on pretty much everything in life is he said, Aubrey, it's not usually can we do the thing, but should we?
Mm,
And for me, he was talking about a piece of technology. Um, I think he was talking about, trying to federate every single application in an enterprise on NTLM. Like
okay.
I was asking him, can we do that with the product? And his answer was like, yeah, yeah. But at the same time, what he said applies to so many other things in life. And
Yeah.
I find myself coming back to that. If I'm looking at buying a new car or something, can I do that? Yeah. Should I do that? No, no. Or, anything, with my kids, if they want to do something on the weekend, or can I? Yes, but probably shouldn't do XYZ, right? But it,
Mm.
it 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 taught me in one quick moment to assess everything at that level. Can you? Sure. Should you? That's more important.
Yes, there's the why behind everything we do,
That's
and
right.
we need to consider that why it does make sense to do a certain thing, and it has the outcome that we want, and it's not just we work for work, just to occupy our time. There are a lot of good things to do, and on this part in challenging times, and you had a lot of those, how has your support network helped you maintain focus and motivation in your career? Do you feel like you had that support?
I um I feel like my support network changes
Mm.
rapidly.
Mhm.
I don't ever feel like I don't have one, but I definitely don't have consistent support networks. Like that's something that for me has shifted a lot through time.
Mm-hmm.
I wish that wasn't the case, honestly. But I can tell you that I am much more effective when I do include my support network. Right, it's something that um, I found even today. Right, I wanted to figure out how to engage my community a little bit better with my podcast, and
Mm-hmm.
we have a community engagement manager that I work with, and she and I never really do a lot together. We haven't really communicated that much, a la my support network. This is
Mm-hmm.
somebody who I'm supposed to rely on for community engagement, and I'm not
Yes.
relying on my support network. So, talking to her was like, oh my gosh, we could definitely grow the listener base on the podcast just by using some of your suggestions here. That's wonderful. And it was like probably the best 1 hour I've spent in like weeks just talking to her today. So
Mm-hmm.
it's nice when you don't rely on the support you have, you're missing out.
Mm-hmm. And i- i- if you were to build a team from scratch now, what qualities would you look for to foster a supportive and collaborative work environment and team environment?
Um, it's funny. This is where I may answer differently from anyone you interview on this.
It's okay.
I work for F5, which is a human first company, and that is something that we take very seriously. So we oftentimes will make a decision on a hire to go with somebody who might not have nearly the same technical qualifications, but culturally, if they're a fit and they're human first,
Hmm.
and they have a diverse way of looking at things, if they have kind of a just a new perspective that we might not consider. F5 has always been about diversity. And I have also always been about diversity and ideas. So you asked me if I'd put together a team. I would put together a diverse team, no matter what that team's goal is. I think that, if you're talking about, if you're talking about maybe the agile software process, right? You could talk about having, you know, uh, 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 project manager who's like comes from a certain type of background or has had, this sort of extra skill. And then maybe your implementation engineers are, a wide variety of people with different ideas. Maybe they've come from different, one from service provider and somebody from, a more traditional medium business enterprise or something like that. And then you're going to need people who will maintain these systems and do like, things of that nature. Well, maybe they've also come from different backgrounds and things. Like to me, that is the value. The value that we have in humans is super important. Um, and I think that's really important to keep in mind also, as we have this new AI, you know, sort of thing happening on the world. So
Agree. I completely agree. The humanity is first, and after the technology and everything we build with that technology. So yes, it's amazing. Yeah, thank you very much. It brings new perspective, and it brings, and for anyone who sees now this podcast, we have something to learn from everyone, and everything diversity is wow. In the end, helps us to reach our goals and be more and learn more from the others. All right.
I
Ah,
believe that too.
yeah. A funny question for you. If you
Sure.
could have dinner with any figure from the tech industry, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Man, that's tough. You know what? This is going to sound crazy, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say my CEO, my current CEO, Francois Loco Denou. He
Wow.
is a spectacular and influential human being for me, and somebody who I met on one occasion in a stairwell, and
Mhm.
this guy was. I was nervous, and I said, Francois, I'm sorry, I'm on the XYZ team, and I think you're doing a great job, and I'm there with my family because it was actually a sales awards trip. I was lucky enough to have had a really great year that year. So he said, great, well, thanks so much. And my son looked up at him and said, hey, do you want to thumb wrestle? And I think if it had been any other CEO of a major manufacturer, they may have looked at my son and went, sure, sometime. Thanks, kid. And walked off. But Francois he eyeballed my son and he said, sure, what's your name? And my son said his name and he said, I don't know this game. How do you play it? And so my son explained it to him. And so he took the time to sit and thumb wrestle
Mhm.
with my son. But before they did, he said, on one condition, he goes, I'll play your game, but after we're done with your game, I'm going to show you a game that I used to play when I was your age. It's called Slap Hand. And so they did. Not only did they thumb wrestle, but Francois took the time with his family standing right there, like
Wow.
to teach my son a game, and
Mhm.
just it was spectacular. And not just because he took the time with my son, but the guy is inspirational on 100 million levels. Every time I see him speak, it's like, oh my gosh. I mean, not only does he inspire, but he just makes you glad to be alive. I mean, the guy's just amazing. So yeah. So him, I would say Francois.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
If you would recommend one book or resource that significantly influenced your career, what it will be?
I can't do that. I'm not much of a reader. I read technical manuals. I think, that's I think a lot of us in the tech industry are guilty of that. I don't take enough time to read. Well, I do.
Yes.
I occasionally read, but they're not fancy reading like comic books, right? So you
Oh,
can see
wow.
them,
That's good enough too.
in the background there, but I wouldn't recommend those necessarily
Mhm.
for anything like that. For me, honestly, the thing that has helped me in terms of reading I hate to say it's going to be Google. I it's mastering that early was like it allowed me to find anything that I needed, and
Mhm.
whether that thing is a recipe that's going to taste the way I want it, so not just like meatloaf, but turkey meatloaf with XYZ spices,
Mhm.
I can find that based on what I have available or whatever. Or if I need to figure out how to, write a brand new program in a language that I've never used before, that's something that's super easy. I mean, t-
Mhm.
tell me you've never robbed Perl code from the internet, right? I mean, like there's there's Perl code for years out there.
Mm. Yeah, yeah. Uh, to understand, you love comic books.
I do. I always have. So
uh, and you're playing also guitar.
I'm actually more of a drummer, but I also play guitar. I've written music. I've been in bands for, I mean, forever. So actually, I'll send you a link. But there's a link of me. I did the initial theme song for my podcast, all me.
Mhm.
I did
Wow.
drums, guitar, bass, and keyboards. So
Wow, amazing.
yeah.
Wow, so comic books, guitar, all the instruments that you play, making music. What other, I don't know, passions do you have?
Being a dad, honestly, that's it. There's no other time. I don't have time for the music anymore. Like I tell you, I don't have time to read the comics anymore. It's like I go through. Look, this is to read. Like I only read four
Okay.
comics. Like there's only four that I read, but I've
Mm-hmm.
got them stacked up for months just because I'll take a day and just knock them out somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
You got in the background. Okay. I see. Okay. Thank you very much, Aubrey. It
Thanks for
was a
having me.
delight speaking to you. And on the final um, part of the podcast, could you share some final thoughts or advices for the audience?
Um, man, I think just keep learning. I think I said that before, but honestly, keep keep learning. It increases, you know, not just the amount that you know, but it shows other people that you're curious. And I think that in your uh in your career, that's really important because if you see when you see people in the career world that don't want to learn, that don't want to
Yeah.
elevate themselves, those aren't the people that succeed, right?
Mhm.
No one's just going to notice that you did extra work. You have to show people that you're willing to learn and try new ideas and to innovate, right?
Mm,
That's really it. So you can't innovate without learning.
yeah. Yeah. And that all it came from your inner motivation and your goals that and your plan and willing to action on those goals you set for yourself rather than be stagnant and just wait for from someone else to give you direction
That's right.
which doesn't help you. Yeah. um thank you very much, Aubrey, for your insights. It was a pleasure discussing
Likewise.
with you. I appreciate your time and being here with me on this podcast. Thank you very much.
Thank
Have a
you, Dan.
great evening. Bye. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Vibe It Up. I hope you enjoyed our insightful conversation with Aubrey King. Before we go, I want to extend a big thank you to our guests for sharing their valuable experiences and perspectives. If you, our listeners, have been inspired or have burning questions after this episode, I encourage you to connect with us. You can find more about Vibe It Up on our YouTube, LinkedIn, or Discord channels. There you'll discover additional resources, episode transcripts, and information about our fantastic guests. For real time updates and behind the scenes content, follow us on our social media platforms. You can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, or YouTube, where we share the latest news, sneak peeks, and engage with our amazing community. If you have suggestions for future episodes, topics you'd like to explore, or if you want to be a guest on the show, feel free to reach out. Your input is what keeps the Vibe It Up community thriving. A big thank you to all our audience for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. It helps us reach more tech enthusiasts like yourself. So stay tuned for our next episode where we'll continue to explore the stories and insights from the dynamic world of software development and tech industry. Until then, this is Dan Tudorache signing off. Remember, keep vibing it up in the tech world, and we'll catch you in the next episode.